I am back, everybody. I've recently upgraded my system after spending far too long with an 8-year-old i9-9900K, which, let's face it, was starting to seriously cuck my performance in quite a few modern games. It got to the point where benchmarking setting games properly was difficult because I was so heavily CPU limited that the results weren't really representative of what the GPU could actually do. Now that the upgrade is finally done, one of the first games I wanted to come back to was Metal Gear Solid Delta. I haven't properly touched Delta since around launch, and while I don't remember it being completely unplayable, I definitely remember having some fairly noticeable performance issues with it. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to come back, run some proper benchmarks, and see whether the game has actually improved since release, or whether we can simply brute force our way through the problems now. I'm going to test around 3 or 4 demanding areas that I recall specifically from my playthrough being fairly heavy on both CPU and GPU. Using the exact same routes where possible so the results remain reasonably consistent, I'll also be using a mod to remove the game's 60 FPS cap, purely so we can actually see what the system is capable of and what sort of performance we can expect from the game. Motion blur and depth of field will both be disabled. Aside from making the footage cleaner for YouTube, I don't really want them either affecting or obscuring image quality during the comparisons, or just during the runs. The recording itself costs me roughly 2 to 3 FPS, so keep that in mind when looking at the results. Now you notice I'm not testing frame generation. Delta doesn't natively support it. You can enable it through a mod, and from my experience it does work, but I'm deliberately excluding it from these benchmarks because the game itself starts exhibiting problems once you begin pushing significantly past 60 FPS. So for this test I want to focus primarily on actual rendered performance and see how well Delta holds up without any generated frames masking anything. Okay, so here we are in game. I'm going to show you all the settings that I'm using. So ignore the maximum frame rate because I'm using a mod that uncaps the frame rate, as I've mentioned. DLSS is set to quality. Graphics mode is set to custom because I've turned off motion blur and depth of field. But everything else is pretty much set to ultra, and I'm using the old legacy piss filter, which shouldn't affect performance at all. So there is that. So I'm going to just take a run through Razvet here and see how the game performs. So we're getting like a nice, it goes between 70 to 80, 99 even. That's because this is not a dense area. So it's like a somewhat stable frame rate through here. If I climb up the ladder, if I climb up the ladder and look at the area from above, probably going to see a small hit to FPS. It went from like 90 to 75. And this is on the highest settings, right, that the game allows. So 73, yeah, not too bad, but not exactly great either, considering this is a very expensive GPU and CPU combination. So I'm going to move into the next area now, which is going to be the lake, Black Lake or whatever. And this is where you start seeing some frame dips, as you can see here. It's going to hold steady around 70. There won't be any stuttering or anything, but it's going to start dipping, especially if the rain comes in. But this is a big open area, so with this sort of GPU and CPU combination, this is pretty heavy. Like if you look just at a wall, the frame rate will rise up to about 90. So when you start looking at this open area here, yeah, you're going to start seeing some frame rate issues. So with DLSS, you know, this sort of frame rate isn't that great. That's a lot of money just to be able to run 2K at just above 70 FPS. But it's not as bad as I thought it would be. I thought it would be getting around 60. Okay, so now we're in the next area, which is the river. Now this area in particular is very, very heavy. You can tell we're GPU bound at 100%. So see, we're already dipping to like the 60s. If I start swimming underwater, it's only going to get worse. And watch what happens when I come out of the water. See that? It dipped all the way below 60. So we're just barely pushing through 60 here on these settings, on Ultra. Like it's having a tough time holding like a stable 60. And the game has like some sort of input lag issue as well. So basically the closer to 60 you are, the less responsive it feels for some reason. Like even at 60 FPS, this game doesn't feel responsive. See, here we go again. The Niagara, like Unreal Engine Niagara particle system bug is still present, right? So whenever you do this, and any particles show up on the screen, your frame rate will just drop by like 10, 15, depending on the scene and area. This will happen when you're diving as well. So this has never been fixed, and I don't see it ever being fixed, unfortunately. So as you can see here, yeah, things are pretty unpleasant in this area. It's another area that is very... This one in particular is CPU intensive, is Granin's Lab. This area in particular. If you don't have a strong CPU, anything made within the last 2-3 years, you're most likely going to struggle with frame rates here. I remember on my i9, I was pushing about 40 to 30 FPS in this area. This is where I got to, and I started lowering my settings because the game was running really badly. We're still GPU limited, fairly GPU limited. It's not super bad, but it's we're like 99, 98%, which you know, it's decent. I was seeing like 90 FPS. So this area on this CPU combination and graphics card runs fairly well. Like, but it is a very CPU intensive area, I have to say. So if you're playing this on like I said, an older CPU, you're gonna see some problems. But everything else other than this is fine. Another area I wanted to test out is this area. The bridge. Bridge is fairly intensive. Or can be fairly intensive. Depends on which angle you're looking from. If I take these two guys out here. You notice, like, when you enter bushes and shrubbery, like, if you look at it from certain angles, you see some, like, frame dips. For the most part, it is okay. But this is on, like, you know, a fairly high-end system, I would say. Based on these specs, it's pretty high-end. So if you're running anything less than this, you'll probably want to scale the settings down a little bit, I would say. Okay, so now I'm going to test what I like to call the optimized settings that I've kind of developed or discovered for this game back when I was playing on my old rig. So the only real changes, we're back to quality mode, and shadows are down to high, and global illumination is down to high as well. If you still don't see playable frame rates with these settings, you can lower things a little bit more, maybe shadows to medium and so forth. But in my experience, ultra shadows has a massive impact on frame rate, as does global illumination ultra. So let's see, if I lower these, we're up to 100 frames per second now, just by changing two settings. Previously, we were running about 70 in this area, give or take. Changing these two settings has a better impact on the frame rate than just DLSS balance on its own. So if I run into here, you can see 110, 113 FPS, 115, 120. So these settings clearly have a massive impact on frame rate. And the visual difference is really not noticeable. I can't notice anything that would visually change this too much for me. I think, oh, this looks shit. So we're pushing almost 100 overlooking the compound, which is crazy good. If you're in a weaker system, definitely much like a recommendation from me. We're still sitting at 98 to 99% GPU usage, and I'm guessing that is because I'm recording as well. But now if we head over to the lake, let's see what sort of difference in frame rate we can expect here. Okay, so we're looking at like 90 FPS. Probably about an average of 100. Yeah. We're looking at a big improvement in frame rate. Everything's better. Fluidity. I guess the only issue I'd have with DLSS is that sometimes there's a bit of shimmering on Snake's bandana. But yes. Now if we did a roll, this is going to happen regardless of settings. You will get these FPS drops. Generally, the closer to 60 you are, the less likely this is to cause these drops, these noticeable drops for you. So we're going to be seeing some insane frame rates here because we've also freed up some GPU space. Yeah, we're looking like a, 100, well into the hundreds. Occasional dips to the 90s. Of course, no stuttering, which is very surprising for a UE game. But yeah, looking very clean, very nice, more than playable. So definitely, if you are on a weaker system, right, trying to push 2K, these are definitely my recommended settings for you. And lastly, we're testing out the bridge. So you can already see we went up from like 60 FPS here in this area to close to 100 just from those settings being changed. So the settings can scale incredibly well if you let them. And yeah, just straight up 90 looking at the bridge. It's more than playable, decent. You don't even need frame generation. Since this game's capped to 60 anyway, it's still nice to have that overhead in case anything big happens. Like, big explosion, loads of particles. Yeah, very nice. Okay, now I'm doing the same test, but the only thing that I've changed is DLSS to balanced. So from ultra to balanced. I recommend ultra textures if you have the VRAM capacity for it. Around 8 gigs should be enough. It should be fairly sufficient, but you never know with these games. So, yeah. And then, yeah, everything else is just as it was. So, now we're going to be seeing very high frame rates. I'd be very surprised if, we had a stutter there, but I'd be very surprised if it dipped below 100 in this area. If I go here, we'll probably be pushing way past 120, yeah. And the game still looks really good. Like, balanced and quality have a very, very minuscule difference in detail and quality. It's very hard to notice. I'm up to 105 overlooking the compound. And if you look at Snake's hair, there is a bit of shimmering. But that's about it that I can see from a quality perspective issue. Now if we go to the lake, yeah, we're looking at a nice 90, 95 with these optimized settings. So it's, yeah, looking nice and stable. So we're getting almost 100 FPS in the river now with these optimized settings and, with DLSS unbalanced. Just by changing from ultra to high, it made quite a bit of an impact. You see a dip here to like 92, which I understand because this area is kind of unoptimized. There's a lot of reflections and shadows. But yeah. This is definitely much better than it was at the start, so now we can swim through here without any issues. You still get the FPS drop coming out of the water, but it's much smoother. But the only thing I would say is that the visual quality in this area, there is a bit of fuzziness going. settings. So that's something to keep in mind. Now I'm just going to retest the bridge one last time. Not even going to bother with Brandon's lab because we'll be seeing insane frame rates. But yeah, now in the bridge area, we're looking much better. Not even much better, we're just probably pushing it as high as it can go without sacrificing visuals too much. So yeah, to conclude, have they fixed MGS3 Delta performance? Not really, but you can make the settings in the game work by just changing a few settings, right? In my opinion, these are the balanced settings for this game, like balanced or just optimized settings, you know? Shadows from ultra to high, global illumination to high, and you should be seeing bigger improvements to, well, you should be seeing big improvements to performance without sacrificing visuals too much, because I feel like if you start going past high to medium and low, that is when you're going to start seeing some drawbacks of quality and like visuals. That's when they will start to suffer, and you'll start seeing you know, issues here and there. So if you've got a much weaker system, my personal recommendation would be, yeah, if your general consensus for DLSS as well is that if you're running 2K, balance is kind of the sweet spot. You will see a bit of fuzziness here and there. It depends on the game highly. But if you turn off stuff like motion blur and depth of field, it should help with the clarity a little bit. For 1080p, I would recommend quality. It will probably look better than the native TAA, and you won't see like much of an FPS here. If anything, it will help, especially if you're GPU limited. And then yeah, high, and then ultra or high if your VRAM allows it. But then yeah, that should be more than playable for most systems. And as long as you've got like a, I don't know, 4060, 4070, you know, anything like above that or give or take, you should be okay. Just don't go expecting like any miracles or to be pulling some crazy frame rates. But yeah, that is pretty much it. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope this helps you run and optimize the game. And yeah, that's it. That's me out. Peace.